Castiel the Angel on the CW Supernatural. But the weird thing is, Misha Collins doesn't seem satisfied to just portray a good dude on TV. It turns out it's sort of a lifestyle choice for him. He's also the founder of a nonprofit that encourages random acts of kindness. And he's also the guy behind the most insane competition slash scavenger hunt slash It's a thing called Gishwas, and he just needs to explain it to you. Let's get him out here. Please welcome Misha Collins to LiveWire.
Why don't I get a music stand?
Because it has all the questions I'm going to ask you on it, and that would ruin things. Hi Misha, welcome to LiveWire.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Feels slightly weird to be sitting in this extremely formal and performative environment with you because we both live in the same smallish town in Washington.
That is true. I could corroborate this. Bellingham. Or did you not want to reveal where you live? You're going to have weird stalkers at your house. Let me just tell you a story. So we live in a small... You mind?
No. Misha, I know who they're here to see.
So we live in a... Hi, guys. We live in a small town, and sometimes that can be weird because people recognize you all the time at the grocery store, and sometimes my kids are like, oh. My kids, by the way, who are here in the audience. Hi, guys. My son sometimes says, oh, another picture, when someone asks for a picture, which is really full of grace, as a comment.
That's what his name means, right? Full of grace?
Yeah. West.
It's a translation thing.
Yeah. It's from the old Latin. Anyway, today we got a flat tire, and on the way here, and it was just before we got on the freeway, and I was like, oh, let's Google. We went to the tire place, and everybody was buying snow tires today. And they said it's an 8-hour wait. And then I just sort of walked around in there. That's an awfully long wait, hoping that somebody would recognize me and get skipped to the front of the line. It's a really terrible thing to do, but somebody did. And like, I could probably change that for you really quick. And then he said, hey, not to be weird, man, but I love your son's cooking show, and we saw some of your yard in the shot. My wife figured out where you live. That's not stalkerish, is it? And I was like, no, man, that's totally fine. Normally, I'm like, yeah, that's a little weird, but he was changing my tire for free, so I was like, that's cool. Come over anytime.
You heard that, Randy and Les Schwab? You can head over to Casa de Collins anytime. Let's talk about Gishwas.
Okay.
What is this thing?
So Gishwas started on a lark as me just trying to play with the fandom of my show and trying to figure out what strange things I could get them to do. Yeah, I guess it was sort of a weird, abusive power play on my part. And I had been carrying around this list of art projects for a long time that had not yet been materialized because I procrastinated and don't actually do anything. And so I just sort of put those on a list along with some other stuff for a scavenger hunt that we ran online. There was just a few hundred people that participated, but it was... When the submissions started coming into my email of the things that people had done for the scavenger hunt, I thought to myself, this is the most fun thing I've ever done. I have to keep doing this. And the people that participated had an amazing time. And now we have, many tens of thousands of people participating in 100 countries around the world. And we've raised a lot of money for charity and also had a lot of people break out of their comfort zones, and I get to laugh at people humiliating themselves throughout the process. So it's win-win-win all around.
Yeah. What is there a specific thing that comes to mind that was really memorable for you? Like a thing that somebody did that just kind of blew your mind?
There have been a lot. I mean, this year we had an item which was to get a child to write a note to the universe and take a photo of that in space. So they had to get a note into space, and a lot of people pulled it off. And there's these amazing photographs of a paper document floating in space with Earth behind it and a child writing a message to the universe, which is kind of amazing. We had one of the items one year was a fully decorated Christmas tree floating in the air, lifted by helium balloons, and it was an arresting thing to see. And I use the term arresting because also some regional airports were closed due to Christmas trees in the airspace.
That also happened on Ernest Saves Christmas. I remember. It's a long time ago I saw it. By the way, I want to let the radio listeners know we're talking to Misha Collins from the TV show Supernatural and also the guy behind Gishwas. Okay, so I saw there was a piece on CBS TV about this project, and they pointed out that you had someone make a lute out of lutefisk, like a playable lute. I think the audience's reaction is appropriate in this matter. That might violate a Geneva Convention. What happened with that?
You have to admit, it's a funny idea.
It is a good idea.
And then when you hear people groaning in pain when you mention it in the audience here, that's sort of all the payment that you need. It's very satisfying.
Thank you. Scarred for life.
Yeah.
You know, the audience here, quite possibly, Misha, knows more about the answers you're going to give than you do. It's very interesting as you're talking through things with the scavenger hunt and the TV show Supernatural, people are filling in any pauses that you have because they have that deep of a knowledge of you and your life and everything that goes on. What does that feel like?
I've been going on stage quite a bit in the last few years because we do these conventions for our show. And it's a format much like this, except for no radio and no man with a tie. And I sit up on stage and I answer questions from the audience. And the first time I went up on stage, I was really nervous, and I actually was like, I made notes for myself because I don't remember what happens in our show, and I thought it was basically going to be a trivia quiz, and I was going to have to keep up with these super fans. And I realized right away, I can't keep up, so I'm not going to try to. And it's much easier to just let everybody know that you're stupid and then set the bar really, really low so that their expectations are they're never disappointed, sort of like our president-elect.
This show isn't going to air for 4.5 years, so that's not going to be a relevant comment.
I'm sorry, I was recently impeached president.
Thank you. We want this show to be sort of an evergreen that we can air whenever, so if you could just give us all the versions of the multiverse of how bad it's going to be.
Our recently incarcerated president.
I actually, if it seems like he's a natural at radio, it's because you actually worked at NPR for a while. You also worked at the White House. I want to talk a little bit about your life outside of being an actor and that stuff, but we have to take a quick break first. We have Misha Collins here on LiveWire Radio. Back in a moment for the next interview. Welcome back to LiveWire Radio, coming to you from the Neptune Theater in Seattle, Washington. We have Misha Collins here from the television show Supernatural on CW. He's also the guy behind the nonprofit Random Acts and also the brains behind Gishwas, which is an amazing scavenger hunt. I was, in talking to you a little bit and also in kind of reading up on you, I find it to be a minor miracle that you sit here as a person who's well known for being an actor, because it doesn't seem like that's the path your life was on into your 20s. Like, you were doing a lot of other things, right? Like, this acting thing seems like it was a late addition to the portfolio of Misha Collins.
That I think is true. I thought I was going to go into politics as a young person, and I was a big fan of National Public Radio. I was such a big fan, actually, that my wife, who's sitting over there, we were just dating at the time. But for my 18th birthday, she brought me to the National Public Radio headquarters, but it was a surprise, and she wasn't telling me where she was taking me. And I said, "Oh, just give me a hint, just give me the address." And she said, "It's 2020 M Street Northwest." And I was like, I know that's NPR headquarters. Like, I was a super fan.
How odd that you were that level of super fan and now you have that level of super fans. You're like studying your yard from space to figure out where you live.
So I ended up interning at NPR, and then that turned into a job there briefly, and it was amazing. I loved walking through the corridors, seeing the faces that were attached to the voices that I knew so well from radio, and had an amazing time working there. I also interned at the White House during Clinton's first term? I can't remember. Clinton's term. And didn't like it very much.
What didn't you like about it?
Well, they had me doing a lot of database work, and I wasn't terribly skilled at that, so I decided that politics wasn't for me. And I decided I actually saw also that there was quite a bit of nepotism in the political process. Like, a lot of the people that I was surrounded by were people who were who had either had their parents donate a lot of money to the campaign or had volunteered on the campaign, and it wasn't necessarily the best and the brightest minds in the world. And that was a little bit disappointing to me. And so I decided that I would, get out of that kind of environment and go where everybody has integrity and does things for the right reason. And so I moved to Hollywood.
Right. Absolutely. What was the first time that you tried acting? Like, how did you get started, actually?
Well, my mother was a storyteller and did community theater in my youth, and so my very first role, I was 4 years old, and it was in a play about the Chicago 7, which is it was like a 1970s...
It was like a protest group, right?
Protest group. I think that they threw pig's blood on something or whatever. I didn't remember the storyline very well because I slept through most of the production, but she would always wake me up for my line, which I still remember, which was, "Yes, I can believe it because it was true." And I played a little 4-year-old girl. So that was my entree into the world. But I did a lot of plays when I was a kid and into college. But I think partly because of my upbringing, I thought, well, this isn't really a viable way to make a living. And then when the White House didn't feel like it was working out for me, I thought, well, it'll probably work.
Acting.
Let's go.
Then you found out there was a lot of data entry. You were like, I don't know if this is for me either. I hope this is okay for me to ask about. You shared with me this story that I still can't stop thinking about, which is, I don't know if it was your grandmother or your great-grandmother, somebody in your family who was born prematurely, and how they were able to survive. Do you mind talking about that?
I'm so glad you asked. Nobody ever asks.
Most of them haven't been at your house eating out of a pumpkin, which is literally when this conversation happened the first time.
My grandmother was born in 1908, and she was born premature. She only weighed 2 pounds, and at the time that was pretty much a death sentence for a newborn, a preemie. And they had recently invented this newfangled apparatus called the incubator, and they discovered that you could put a newborn baby in an incubator, and with the right food and water, it might survive. And this
makes it sound like a hamster.
You gotta put some toilet paper rolls in there too. Give it something to play with.
Let it get some exercise. So But it was very newfangled, and in order to fund this sort of cutting-edge technology, they put the babies in incubators on tour, and they went to fairs and circuses, and people would pay 2 bits to see these tiny little babies in the incubators. And so maybe that's ultimately where my show business roots.
You wouldn't be here if not for the generosity of carnies, more or less. You and I, Misha, by the way, we have Misha Collins here on LiveWire Radio from PRI. You and I also share a love of boating and a love of not totally knowing how to operate boats, but not letting that get in the way of our love of boating. How's that going for you?
Okay, it's going all right. We moved to Bellingham, which is right on the water, and the San Juan Islands are right out in front of us, and they just taunt us. And so, even though I have never really spent any time on boats, and heretofore I've always said that I hated boats, I was like, I think we should probably get a boat, but you have to learn a lot, and it's a pain in the butt. So I sort of skimmed through a lot of the educational portion, and just figured I'd do on-the-job training. And brought some friends out in this boat that's too big for me to control. And an engine went out. My friend who lives in Seattle was on board. And we came got blown into the slip. And I said, I didn't give very detailed instructions. I just said, tie it off. But we weren't at the dock yet. And he tried to leap off the boat, but got tangled up in the bow, and I dragged him across the dock. He lives nearby in Seattle, and he's not here tonight.
Maybe some residual bad blood.
Or returning my calls. Yeah, but then, I haven't yet killed anybody, so.
Yeah. Speaking of setting the bar low, it's a fairly low bar for seamanship, Collins. Now, as we've already mentioned, and as anybody with ears can hear, you've got a lot of fans, people are very excited when they get to meet you, and even sometimes get you free tires. If you could, what are the sort of do's and don'ts if somebody recognizes you on the street, wants to come up and talk to you? What is a nice way to have that interaction, and what is a way for that interaction to happen that's less than ideal for you?
Oh, you mean like for somebody who wants to?
Yeah, let's say someone's walking down the street, they're a big fan of Supernatural, they've done Gishwas, and they see Misha Collins.
What's etiquette for approaching somebody?
People are probably curious if they were to happen to run into you. Yeah. How do you like that conversation to go, if at all?
Well, I was scarred early on by an experience where somebody came up to me and said, "Could you take a picture?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." And it was a couple, and I put my arm around the girl, and the guy was like, "No, can you take a picture of us?" And so, from my side of the transaction, that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people will come up and they're like, "Oh my God, are you Misha Collins?" And then they'll stand like awkwardly close to me, and I'll confirm that I am, and then they'll be like, "Wow." And I know that they want to ask for a picture, but they're not asking for it, and I'm so damaged from that earlier experience that I won't offer it up either. And so we just have this sort of awkward stare-off, and that for me is I don't love that transaction either.
So if someone would like to take a picture with you, just go ahead and throw that out early in the conversation.
Earlier than later in the conversation.
Okay, this is good.
Yeah. Also, not another one that I felt sort of crossed a line with me was at a urinal. So.
Yeah, I think we're pretty familiar with the urinal. You don't have to act it out. Although that will be a thrill for some of the audience.
I said I was sorry about that. I said it was just an awkward thing. I didn't know.
By the way, I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do in the car ride home about this costume. Santa Claus shaved his beard and dyed his hair, and that's that, kids.
I'm a young man.
Oh, right, yeah. Sorry, Wes. Okay, what happened at the Euro?
Oh, no, just a selfie, but you know, I was in process.
Oh, man.
And that was a little weird.
Yeah. Okay, the show Supernatural has been on the air for, it is in its, what, 11th season, is that right? Oh, yeah, right, like you know more about the show than I do. Give me a bark. It's the longest running show of its kind in the history of shows of its kind, right? What do you think you want to do when Supernatural, sorry, earmuffs to some of you, when Supernatural runs its course? What's some other stuff that you want to do with your life?
I don't know. I mean, I'm always, we were just in the car driving here, talking, my wife and I, about all the things we want to do, and she had a very frank comment to me, which is, you are totally self-unaware and delusional. Because I have all these fantasies of different things that I want to do, and there's only, according to her narrow-minded perspective on things, only so many things that you can do in one life. So I have not yet sorted that out, but I think that she and I are both excited about a lot of different things and just have to winnow it down somehow. So whatever doesn't have a lot of database entry work,
Pretty much that stuff.
yeah.
Right on. Misha Collins, ladies and gentlemen, right here. All right, Misha, you seem like such a good guy. You play an angel on television. You've started a charity. You are promoting always online the idea of love and acceptance, but we know that you have a dark side. A very dark side, and we are going to find it right now in a segment that we're calling, What Are You Hiding, Misha Collins? We've been watching you.
I've never felt so nervous.
We found out where your house was from one of West's videos. We set up a camera, and we've been watching you, Misha Collins, and we want to figure out what you're hiding. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'd like you to give me an honest answer, okay?
We'll see.
Okay. These are some questions that will help us figure out what you're actually hiding. Okay, Misha Collins. Have you ever pretended to not see someone who was running for the elevator that you were in?
Yes.
I didn't think you were going to crack that easily. Have you ever re-gifted a Christmas present? All the time. Have you ever retransmitted or rebroadcast an account of the baseball game without the express written consent of Major League Baseball?
No, actually I have.
Okay. Have you ever told someone that you were sick so you didn't have to go to their one-person show?
Yes, I have. So, 3 out of 4 isn't bad, right?
No. We're forwarding all this data to Washington. Have you ever started a fake phone call to avoid a real-life conversation?
Not only have I, but I discovered that there's an app for that. Yes, it's so great. It'll make your phone ring, so you can be like, sorry, I'll take this.
I want to say to the crowd here at the Neptune, if Misha gets a call while you're standing awkwardly next to him, not asking for a photo, it's probably... He just did it to me on stage! This one, Misha, for all that's good and right in the world, I hope you're going to say no to this one. Have you ever pretended you read a book that you didn't? Because I have done that, but I'm a terrible person. You're an angel.
You mean like that you have the book at home? Or you own a book?
No, not that you are the owner of the book, but like if somebody brings up like, oh man, that just reminds me of, DeLillo's White Noise. And you're like, oh, that book was amazing, changed my life. Have you ever done that? Because I do that constantly and I'm not proud of it. I don't even know if White Noise was written by Don DeLillo. I was trying to think of Underworld, but I couldn't, so I went with the other one.
I do that. I also do it a lot with film and television. Because as somebody that works in the industry, I should know all of the actors and directors' names, and I don't know any of them. And so I'm always like, yeah, I know. And then what happens is sometimes somebody will say like, Juanita Jones, and I'll be like, yeah. And then they'll be, no, it wasn't Juanita Jones, it was Dolores Fink. And I'll be like, right. But I've already admitted that I agreed with something that doesn't exist or was wrong.
Yeah. Have you ever thrown away something that you could have donated?
Yesterday.
Follow-up question.
And I felt guilty about it though.
You want to tell us what it was? Do you feel comfortable with that?
It was a shirt, and it was actually like it was a perfectly nice shirt, but it was too small for me and I should have donated it, and I was too lazy.
Have you ever donated something that you should have thrown away?
I remember as a child we had very little money, and we shopped at a store that was kind of like the Goodwill store, but cheaper. And
don't pay those Goodwill prices.
But I remember that we brought in our stuff when we were done. We had clothes to get rid of. We brought them into the same store, and I remember them very distinctly saying, we do not take used underwear.
I wish someone would have told my mom that when I was growing up and regularly received used underwear as a gift. Last one, Misha Collins. Have you ever smelt it, dealt it, and denied it?
It's actually my very best story, but I don't think we have time for it. I will give you
We've got all night.
I'll give you the 2 minutes.
Yes!
Do I have 2 minutes?
Absolutely. Let's put 2 minutes on the clock. There's nobody and there's no clock. I don't know who I was telling that to.
My wife and I were doing a transcontinental flight from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. And right before going, my wife's mother brought us to P.F. Chang's China Bistro and basically said, order whatever you want. We were just out of college, had no money, order whatever you want, meant to me, order as much as you possibly can. And got all these very garlicky dishes. Garlic tends to have an effect on me. And so we got on the plane and we got up to altitude, and it was a packed flight, and I was sitting in the middle, and I didn't want to get up. But I also wanted to be judicious, so I just let out a little bit at a time. And I don't know if it was the pressure or what, but it wasn't a little bit, and it was all at once. And the man sitting behind me, he fainted. And the flight attendants came up and they administered oxygen and revived him, and his wife said, somebody has gas. And she was too polite to say somebody farted, but she said, somebody has gas. And the flight attendant said, ma'am, no, that's impossible. All of the fuel is stored in the wings. None of it could ever get in the fuselage. And they left. And then I fell asleep, and then I woke up because I was feeling some abdominal pressure. And again, I naively thought I could control this. And I farted again, and he fainted again. And they administered oxygen for a second time.
They're running out of oxygen at this point, just from your farts.
And his girlfriend again said, somebody has gas? They said, no ma'am. I mean, it was like, and I, at that point, remember just slinking into my seat. I had dealt it, and I was definitely not going to claim it. And she said, somebody has gas. And they said, ma'am, that's impossible. We told you. And then the woman that was sitting on the other side said, no, somebody has to go to the bathroom. And then when the plane landed, we all had to wait for paramedics to take the guy off. And there's no way, like after the first round of medical attention, I knew I wasn't gonna claim it.
Yeah, no.
You know?
I feel like it's a pretty resounding answer to the question of what are you hiding, Misha Collins? Garlic chicken from wherever that place was. Misha Collins, ladies and gentlemen.
This week's show is brought to you in part by Whole Foods Market, now offering holiday meals already cooked and prepared. Because why squabble with family over how to smoke a turkey? Why not spend that time with family eating a